Welcome back, tribe. Got a video here from How Money Works. So, are we in a recession yet?
Late last week, President Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics after they released their quarterly jobs report. The BLS, which is primarily responsible for collecting and presenting job market data, presented a report that was less than flattering about the current state of the economy for average workers. In response, the president claimed that he had issues with the economic numbers for a long time, and that he believed the recent report was phony. Now, hot take alert, but he is most likely absolutely right, just not in the way that he thinks. The July report estimated that the economy had added an extra 73,000 jobs, which was already below expectations. But the real news was that when the BLS ran the numbers again, they realized that they had overestimated May's job creation by 125,000 and June's by 133,000. That means that more than 250,000 jobs that we thought existed never did. And that was just over 2 months. These major readjustments have cast some doubts over the already disappointing numbers from this month, and for many people, it's reconfirmed what they were already thinking. The economy is a lot worse than the numbers are telling us.
The latest jobs report was far worse than expected.
President Trump accused the Bureau's commissioner of rigging the numbers to make himself and fellow Republicans look bad.
Millions of qualified workers hitting the streets every day searching for jobs, but getting rejected.
I got rejected by Taco Bell and Sam's Club.
Making economic policy or business decisions.
We have guys in the private community that are struggling with the same thing. You can't get a job anywhere. I wanted to show you guys this post on the community. It says, the share of young adults living with a parent that has surpassed levels not seen since during the Great Depression and World War II, or at surpassed levels seen during there. And they have 1940 right here, or 1939. And this is the share of young adults living with parents. And this is where we are right now. This is the graph for 2020. It dipped slightly, but it's on the incline again. Guys, do you understand? Even though he fires the guy or woman, it was like some woke Biden nominee that got that job. It doesn't matter because average everyday working Americans are struggling, although the stock market is posting new all-time highs. Firing that person doesn't really do anything because if the government really did report the accurate numbers, you would see that the downward revisions were a little closer to the real truth of what's actually happening in the day-to-day lives of ordinary Americans, but they don't. So is he right that the numbers are false? Yes. But does he think like that person is just revising the numbers down just to hurt Republicans and his cabinet in general? No, that's not what's happening. And maybe, okay, I'll even give you this benefit of the doubt. Maybe they are trying to release higher numbers and then revising them down, but they were doing that with Biden as well. But let's just say they're doing that to cast, a shadow over the presidency. Okay, fine. So now if you instituted your own, you hired your own guy to be the head of the reporting. And what if he were to accurately report the numbers, they'll be way worse than they've ever been. That's just the reality on the ground. And look, I love how this graph, we absolutely bottomed out at 1960. So 1950 and 60, and then something happened from 1960 forward. We began a terrible trajectory upward. So quite literally, you could tell here, if you want to say the share of young adults living with parents, use that as some sort of like a metric for how healthy the economy was, then America absolutely peaked in the 1960s right here. Late 50s, early 60s, America. What changed since then that has caused us to go on a steep incline that 60 years later, essentially, we're right back to pre-World War II or World War II and beyond Great Depression. Think about that. Interesting to think about. Back to the video.
Decisions without reliable data is like trying to fly a plane without reliable instruments. It's just not going to work. By their own admission, the Bureau of Labor Statistics and other government agencies in charge of collecting data have produced less reliable numbers over recent years, and it's only getting worse. A week before releasing the controversial jobs report, the Bureau made another press release talking about major compromises they were making in the collection of consumer prices. This data is used to make the Consumer Price Index, which is what they use to measure inflation. So, it's kind of important. To make matters worse, everybody from politicians to venture capitalists have started jumping in to provide solutions to a problem they really don't understand. But there are 3 big reasons why these compromises are being made in the first place, and 3 reasons why it's probably only going to get worse. The first reason is that markets are changing faster than ever, and traditional agencies are struggling to keep up with new economic realities. For example, the jobs report that is suddenly stirring up so much controversy is really two different surveys, the Establishment Survey and the Household Survey. The Establishment Survey is what was getting so much attention, and it works by asking thousands of businesses and government agencies how many people they have on their payroll for that month. Now, these surveyed businesses supposedly include small, medium, and large employers, but this already presents some challenges. Large employers are more likely to have dedicated human resource departments that can respond to these surveys as part of their full-time job, whereas small businesses on average aren't as timely if they bother doing it at all. The actual survey only takes about 20 minutes, and for a lot of larger companies, it's built in automatically to their payroll software. But for a small business owner already putting in long weeks, a 20-minute survey on payroll statistics often isn't the best use of their time. Even if they do respond to this completely optional survey, it's usually not until after the report has already been published. According to the Bureau themselves, they have been publishing recent reports with as little as 55% of the total eventual collected data, and it's only getting worse every year. To account for this difference, the BLS uses imputed data, which is just a nice way of saying guessing based on previous results. If they are still waiting on lots of small businesses to provide their data, they will look at what small businesses have said in the past compared to large businesses that have already provided their responses and use that to make their report. As any good finance bro will tell you, past performance is always the best predictor of future results. Now, hopefully you all know I am joking, but this system is normally good enough for most months. But the times where this strategy really suffers is during periods of rapid change. Small businesses feel the impacts of bad economic conditions faster and are normally the first to either let go of staff or go out of business completely. So, if reports are only using data from big businesses and then guesstimating the rest, then they won't notice these job losses until they have to go back and do revisions, like what is happening right now. Now, this has been the case since the survey was first conducted. Not to sound too alarmist, but these massive downward revisions were last consistently seen during the run-up to the global financial crisis. But what's changing now is that smaller businesses are just responding less overall, and there are a lot more of them. The rate of new business creation has increased massively since the pandemic. In the past, these were normally real businesses that had a good chance of creating real jobs for real people. And we are still imputing economic data based on that old assumption, when really what most of these new businesses actually represent is people registering for their side hustle as an Uber driver in the gig economy. This not only goes a long way to explaining declining survey response rates because your average person driving Uber isn't going to fill out a BLS survey, but it also creates two bigger problems. The first is that it overestimates real job creation based on outdated assumptions. And the second is that even if this data was accurate, it doesn't capture a more pressing reality. We could create 1 million new jobs next month, and it won't do you much good if you are working 3 of them and still can't afford to make ends meet. And so far, all of this is just one report. There are dozens of agencies across America and the rest of the world that are failing to properly account for changing financial reality.
Yeah, if you're trying to apply for a job, you understand the ghost job epidemic. Nobody's calling back, nobody's hiring. It seems like they're all fake listings. Then, if you're working in certain industries, you're already seeing a massive depression. We did the video on tourism the other day. That's true. I've spoken to literally when I came here, I had a rental car. The guy says it's never been slower than it is this year. My buddy in construction and remodeling and other people that I've worked with, same thing. Nobody is doing repairs on their house. They can't afford it unless it's something luxury or a government contract or commercial work for huge hotels, stuff like that. So the average ordinary American is not spending. So they're not working. They're not spending. They're not traveling. They can't save. There's no money to save. They can hardly afford rent. You can't even afford to buy a house anymore. I mean, all the economic underpinnings are on wobbly ground, and the government is still reporting this half-baked data, acting like everything's good because stock market go boom. Big wow, green numbers, arrows up. But for you and me and everybody else, when you look around and see how everybody's doing on Main Street, it's not good. Things cost too much. Groceries keep getting more expensive. Gas is expensive. We can't afford health insurance. People are one accident away from bankruptcy. Housing got priced out of. And the government keeps saying, look at all this incredible investment. Big, beautiful bill has passed. Your taxes are going to get lower. They cut Medicaid. And then they lowered the corporate taxes again. Why? The amount of corporate taxes they lowered, they could have given every American like a 20% haircut on the taxes that they owe. Number I pulled out of my ass, but to the tune of 800 something. Man, if these corporations are saving nearly $1 trillion, can you imagine what that would do to the average American that owes money? I mean, it's crazy. So our own government is gaslighting us, and you can play this like, shuffling of chairs and firing this guy, hiring somebody else. And like, nobody can trust the numbers. Stop telling us everything is going fine. It's not going fine. The whole point of voting in Trump was making America great again. Do you know what that tells you? Great again, because we've acknowledged that it's currently shit, that the American dream is dead, that America is not great currently in its form. You have to be asleep to believe it. It's that funny joke that rears its head from George Carlin. For the average American, the dream is dead. It's survival now. So, okay, we have a guy that came in with the populist messaging of make America great again. Let's go back in time and fix everything that went wrong up until this point. But when you're out there and you're looking into the ether of our government, all these bills that are being passed, you're thinking, this is not going to improve my life much. My life's not going to get better financially from this. Hey, Blackstone is still buying houses at a record pace. How come they're allowed to buy? Where's the law? It's a simple resolution that could get passed. That bill is very simple. Kick private equity out of home buying. That would completely depress the prices of housing immediately because of a massive supply glut that we find ourselves in from all the properties that they would have to unload. Of course not. Why? Because I'm assuming, it's very safe to assume, that they have donated through one way or another, through a subsidiary, through a parent company, through something, the owner, something, into some dark pool, some super PACs, and all this other shit that got our leaders elected. And people, this is the schism that we're facing right now. All of this shit feels like a scam. Even when you vote in a populist, and he's done good. I'm not hating on everything he's done. I think I could be picky about what I like and what I don't like. Nobody's perfect. But when you run on a populist message and you say you're going to make America great again, and you want to impact the lives of your voters, then there's very common sense things that you have to do. Everybody wants cheaper housing. Everybody wants cheaper gas, cheaper groceries. Everybody wants cheaper access to healthcare. The healthcare system's completely broken. The ordinary man needs a tax break, a bailout. Why corporations? If anything, you proved with tariffs that you could strong arm any company, even as big as Apple, guys. He literally had a meeting with Apple. He got them to invest something like $600 billion into tuning up factories here in the United States to produce multiple components for an iPhone, so they could avoid tariffs. They tried to pivot from China to India, and then Trump called them in, and Tim Apple got on his knees and said, yes, sir, we will move everything. The operations, everything will be in America soon to avoid tariffs. Same shit, NVIDIA, one of the richest, if not the richest company right now by valuation, spearheading the AI revolution through their revolutionary chips that nobody can compete with them with. Same thing, had a meeting. You know what they did? Well, the CEO of NVIDIA wants to sell his chips in China because China's still buying them on the black market one way or another through subsidiaries and deals with other countries that are not blacklisted. They order, China then places the order with that other country, and by a third party, they acquire them anyway. So the CHIPS Act of banning China and suppressing their access to cutting edge chips is fucking irrelevant in the global market that we're in. It's a joke. And so now we're going to sell these state-of-the-art chips to China again. But you know what we did, or I should say what Trump did, was brought the CEO in there, and it's like, yeah, everything you sell in China, we're taking a 15% cut. 15% cut of the profits. End of story. You want to sell to China? We're keeping 15% of your money. That's a deal. And now all the CEOs everywhere are rushing to the White House to make deals with Trump. That tells me that you could have raised the tax rate, you could have bullied them into deals, tariffed them to death, and industry would easily return to America because we're the largest consumer market on earth, still, by a large margin. I mean, do you see when you piece things like this together, you start to understand the amount of leverage we have, especially the amount of levers they have available to pull to make your life, the average taxpayer, much better, much faster than you would ever imagine. He can bring them to heel, multinational corporations richer than countries, in a simple meeting. And then he can pass tax bills that lower the corporate tax rate. You know what? He can absolutely lower your tax rate. He can absolutely make it affordable for you to buy a house. He could. It's just a swipe of a pen like this. But they don't, because me and you don't fucking fund campaigns. We don't pay $100, $200, $300 million to fund a candidate. So they don't work for us. They work for these companies. They work for those special interests. Our system's broken, and we understand that the answer isn't actually Trump. I know the forever Trumpers are going to get mad hearing that. We need someone like Trump, a Trump-like figure that's emboldened and hardened to put America first above all, period. No special interest, no corporations, nothing. The people, for the people, by the people. We need that kind of leader. I think Trump was the catalyst to somebody like that coming to power maybe one day, but he's not that guy. He's the match. He lit the fuse. Who the real one after him is, I don't know. It sure as fuck is in Vance, honestly. It feels like the deep state is very much in power. Very much. Nothing's changed.
So it's time to learn how money works to find out if we can trust our economic data and what it means if we can't. This week's video was made possible by us and our new Spotify page. If you would prefer, Bureau of Economic Analysis produces GDP data. About 70% of that is based on consumer data collected by the Census Bureau in their retail trade surveys. Interagency data sharing, as this is known, is not a result of laziness, but rather a feature of the system so that every department is overlooking every other department. But you can probably start to see the problems. Uncertainty in any part of the system creates uncertainty in the entire system, and that can be really useful for certain groups. The first are politicians who get to cast doubt on numbers that might make them look bad. But let's be honest, they never let numbers get in the way of a good spin anyway. The second group are large investment firms with access to their own proprietary data collection techniques. A report from a data firm published by Newswire estimated that investment management firms could spend as much as $15.4 billion this year on alternative data, which really just means anything not published publicly by government agencies or the media. That is 20 times the annual budget of a department like the Bureau of Labor Statistics. These firms are regularly employing tactics like using private satellite imagery or just running their own surveys where they will actually pay participants for more timely responses. The better their data is compared to the publicly available data released by government agencies, the more they can make on that data asymmetry. Now, you might think this sounds a little bit like insider trading, but it's not. Technically, the information they are collecting is out there for anybody to collect, and it's not their fault if the average goober on Robinhood doesn't have access to a fleet of spy satellites to collect it. This creates the second major problem with our economic data. It's more profitable to privatize the numbers. The BLS, for example, has 10% fewer staff and a 15% lower budget than it did in 2010 following the global financial crisis, after accounting for inflation. Now, that doesn't sound terrible, but the scope of its operation has also grown considerably in that time, making its job a lot harder overall. The fewer resources they have to actually go and collect primary data, the more they have to rely on guesstimations based on historical correlations. An article, ironically, published by Bloomberg last week, reported that the agency would no longer be collecting consumer prices from certain rural regions due to budget constraints. According to the report, the volume of data they are effectively making up has more than tripled in the last 6 months alone. The reason this is so ironic is because Bloomberg is one of the biggest data retailers in the world. Every one of those black and orange screens filled with random spreadsheets and stock charts you see in videos on trading floors is a Bloomberg terminal. Each one of those computers costs about $30,000 a year in an ongoing subscription. And the reason that big investment firms pay that much is because it gives their staff access to information that just isn't available to regular people. Anyway, budget cuts can create a vicious but convenient cycle for these parties. These departments have their budgets cut, so they don't have as many resources to collect reliable reports. These unreliable reports with big adjustments are then used to show how pointless these departments are, so they get their budget cut even more. The average voter doesn't really understand what these people do. The average politician doesn't like having their work critiqued. And the average industry group would love it if they had a monopoly on good, reliable data. And that's the third major problem that's quickly getting much worse. Even if these numbers were absolutely flawless, are they even relevant anymore? There are lies, damn lies, and then there are statistics. It's a quote so old that nobody even knows who originally came up with it anymore. But it's remained relevant for hundreds of years. A survey that I ran on all of you while I was putting this video together found that an overwhelming majority did not think that current economic statistics were an accurate reflection of the real economy.
Of course.
Most people who are paying any attention to these numbers while still living in the real world inherently understand this. The idea that what is causing this disconnect is a secretive group of statisticians plotting away behind the scenes to make politicians look bad is frankly pretty dumb. But there is actually an element of truth in it. A report by Cambridge University found that as we have become more politically polarized and less likely to answer surveys, only the most partisan among us actually bother responding to be counted in the data. A business owner...
TLDR, all the data is fake. The government is making up all the numbers and then gaslighting you into saying everything's going good. Our administration is helping you. Do you see? Do you see? Do you see? Look around you. We're making a difference. This is what you voted for. You got what you voted for. Lint in your pockets. Both of these parties are a problem. The money in politics is a problem. Don't try to have an emotional attachment to a politician or Republicans or Democrats. Political parties are dog shit. It is tyranny. The founding fathers didn't like political parties. We're supposed to have a system that allows people to run individually, but money has corrupted the system so much that if you don't have hundreds of millions of dollars, you can't even campaign. How insane is it that an individual person that may be best suited with the best policies, the most love for America first mentality, making America great again, that person will never get a shot because they don't have somebody knocking on their door to hand them over $100 million in exchange for their soul. That's so fucked. And we want to say like, this person will save us. This person will save us. No, Republicans this, no, Democrats that. You're being played. Just like when the midterms come up, watch the narratives spring out of nowhere that they've been crafting for the past 2 years. Watch how, please vote for me. I'll make a difference. Please vote for me. Pleb, I'll make a difference. One day you will afford a bug sandwich on your 25 social credit score. One day, Ted, you won't be a cubicle slave. You'll actually be able to buy a house and have a child. One day, if you keep voting for me. Look at what happened since that graph in the 1960s. You kept voting since the 60s, guys, 60 years of voting. And it's been going downhill. Zoom out to the bigger picture. The swamp is the two-party system. That's the swamp. Anybody who dips their toes in the two-party system is the swamp. They become enveloped by it, covered in it. It leaves a stench on them. That is the system. That's how it was designed. I hope people wake up to that, man, because we really do need a third party, or we need independent candidates. We need a way to crowdfund a candidate that can speak maybe on a public platform, voice their policies and their vision for America, and somehow we can crowdfund them against the two-party system. This is the only way. I swear to you, this is the only way. If you want to work within the political system that we have right now, we have to play essentially the same game, fight fire with fire, crowdfunding millions of dollars for somebody to get into those presidential debates, to get into those primaries, to go head to head against the Republican nominee and the Democratic nominee. That's it. Anyways, appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you haven't, check out the shop. We got it up and running. Appreciate everybody that's been buying shirts. Get your Make Masculinity Great Again or Wholeflation hats. We got the bug sandwich because, Bill Gates just invented carbon-based butter somehow out of thin air. I can't believe it's not butter. You remember? I made a post about it. You remember how good that went? Absolutely insane. So yet another concoction to get us off natural food, and probably we'll find out 50 years later is actually way worse for our health, as if we haven't been through that song and dance already. Thank you guys. I'll see you on the next one.